Because I can tell you are very American for me. But I'm still curious about, is there any part inside of you feel like you are very Taiwanese? Can you introduce yourself to the audience?
My mom is from Taiwan and my dad is from the US.
Yeah.
And I was born in the US on the East Coast, but we moved to Taiwan when I was 3 years old.
Yeah.
And we lived in Taiwan for 7 years. And when I graduated 4th grade, we moved back to the US and I've been based there pretty much ever since.
What was the feeling you first came back to Taiwan?
Well, my Chinese definitely was a little bit worse off than it was when I moved away.
So language barrier?
No, it wasn't a language barrier. But when we first came back, I was probably 14 years old and I don't have a lot of specific memories on what it was like to be back. But I do remember just being filled with a lot of longing to move back to Taiwan. So I used to write journals back then and I was writing pages and pages about how much I miss Taiwan and my friends and my family. Yeah, so when I first came back, it was hard.
But did you send any letter to your Taiwanese friend?
We kept in touch a little bit, but back then there was no social media, right? So it was only long distance calls and letters at the time. So it was harder to keep in touch.
Oh, so you don't have any like Taiwanese friend right now? I mean, from your like childhood?
We're Facebook friends, but yeah, we haven't really been connected in a long time.
Really? I mean, you should do.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you should.
Okay,
I mean, you should.
Hey,
come on, you should. You should do that. You should text them, you know, and you can practice the memory stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that's a
Just
really
like
good point. Yeah, 100%.
What it's like being half Taiwanese, grown up in Taiwan, especially like early days in Taiwan. So can you talk about it?
In the 90s, there weren't that many foreigners living in the city where we lived. We lived in Zhongli. And so I would say my family kind of got special treatment. Like people were really curious about us. We were different and people really wanted to hang out with us. So that was actually really quite nice. I have no bad memories of my childhood. We were surrounded by family. I grew up, 10 minutes away from my grandma, away from my cousins who were all the same age as me. So it was a really lovely experience overall.
Did you go to the public school or did you go to international school?
Yeah, I went to a public school.
Oh, okay. So just like every Taiwanese.
Yeah, 中正国小.
Okay, 中正国小. Did you feel any struggle when you were younger, especially when you were a child?
When I was younger, no. I mean, I was always aware I was different.
Only that?
Yeah, only that. But it was nothing negative at all. I think it's more so now when I come back and I'm trying to retrace my Taiwanese side. And every time I'm back here, I'm like, okay, I'm definitely American because I feel like no matter how Taiwanese I am, how perfect my Chinese is, I'll always just look different. And by virtue of that, just be treated a bit differently. There's no way to really blend in.
You mean every time you came back to Taiwan, always?
Yeah, I would say so.
Because you moved to United States when you were 10, right? So for you, I think it's a culture shock.
Yeah.
So what was it like?
Went to school in Taiwan until 4th grade, right?
Yeah.
And so I started 5th grade in the US. And when I started school in the US in 5th grade, we were doing math, we were doing the level of math that we were doing in kindergarten in Taiwan. So my education was years ahead of everyone else. So that was the first thing that was really interesting. And I came back to the US and just
cultural differences.
Yeah, the education system was just really different. And I think in Taiwan, there's just a huge focus on very rigorous education from a really early age that in the US isn't necessarily there as much. Maybe there's more of a focus on creativity and self-expression. So that was one of the first big differences that I noticed. And then in Taiwan, I feel and I don't know if it's changed at all over the years, but Taiwan is a very family-oriented country.
Yeah, very family,
Exactly. So you're always with your friends and family, and America is not like that. It's very individualistic. It's such a big country, so people live very far away from each other. So I went from seeing my grandmother and my cousins every day to being very isolated from family. And I think that's a bit more common in the US, so that was another big thing. And then a third big thing was that American culture was a lot more sexualized than Taiwanese culture. So I wouldn't say Taiwanese culture is conservative necessarily, but it's in pop culture, you just don't see blatantly sexual images that much. You mean
big boobs? Or a very sexy outfit?
Sexy music videos, song lyrics. So that was a really big difference for me. Like I feel like American culture it's just really sexualized. Like everything is like sex sells, and you're bombarded with those images from a really young age. And so even when I was 10 years old, like I remember being like kind of scared of the music and like the images I was seeing on TV, because it was just so different than Taiwan.
What was like, growing up in United States, especially you look Asian and you have like a half Taiwanese background. So what was like?
Yeah, so in the US, the city where I grew up, it's really diverse. And so everybody looks different. So it's easier to blend in that sense. You do get a little teasing when you're younger, like in middle school, people would be like, oh, you're Asian. And, it's funny, the stereotypes in America of Asians are like, oh, you're really good at math and you're smart.
Oh, stereotype.
Or like you eat cats. That was kind of the negative side.
I mean, in the old days,
Yeah. So that was like a stereotype. So you would get like a little bit of poking fun, but I feel like that wasn't exclusive to Asians necessarily. Like everyone kind of got teased when they were young.
Yeah. And you also mentioned about because you wanted to really like fit in American culture, so you actually abandoned your like Taiwanese part.
When you're young, I think you have a huge desire to just fit in with people your age, and so I tried really hard to do that, and part of that was kind of becoming as American as I could as fast as possible. So I did kind of abandon my Taiwanese identity. And that's not in a bad way. I didn't have any negative thoughts about my Taiwanese identity. It was just that I wanted to be accepted. I didn't want to be different from everyone else. I wanted to be like a young American girl. And so I bought blue jeans. And I remember my first day of American school, I was like, okay, I'm wearing blue jeans. Like I'm like everyone else. And so I tried to absorb like the pop culture, the music, the TV people were watching, like the language they were using, and tried to fit in really that way.
Did you find anything they have the same background, like you in a school or even the neighborhood, something like that, or you are the only one?
Yeah, no, not for years. I was the only one for a really long time, and there were Asians where I grew up, but it was mostly Southeast Asian, so like Cambodia and Vietnamese more than like Chinese and Taiwanese. So no, not for years. And that's actually part of the reason why I moved to California as an adult, because I visited San Francisco, and just in the airport I saw a bunch of mixed race, like half Asians, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is more than I've seen in like the last 10 years on the East Coast. And so having that was one of the reasons why I decided to uproot and move to California from the East Coast.
Okay, because I can tell you are very American for me, but I'm still curious about, is there any part inside of you feel like you are very Taiwanese?
I feel very Americanized, generally speaking, just because I've been there for 20-something years. But I think the one part that I still feel really connected to Taiwan is the food.
Oh, okay, like stinky tofu?
Yeah,
no?
I love stinky tofu. And I think food has just been a way, and I think this is true for a lot of people who move away from the place where they grew up, like maybe a completely different country. Like food is one of those ways that you kind of reconnect with where you came from. Like it can be very nostalgic, like just like eating a bite of something from Taiwan would transport me back. And so as I became an adult, like this became a big way that I tried to reconnect with my former Taiwanese self. And so I started cooking a lot of Taiwanese food and going out to eat a lot of Taiwanese food and like sharing that with my friends and my husband as a way of being like, here's the culture where I came from. So I would say food is probably one of the biggest connectors now.
Hongbao, because in our like Chinese New Year, we give each other like hongbao. So do you have any like experience like that?
My grandma just now gave me a hongbao for my marriage, and that was the first one I've received in a really long time. Yeah. It's been a really long time, but I really remember fondly from my childhood, like every New Year, getting really excited to get a hongbao from my amma and like my family. But yeah, it's been a long time until now.
In the future, if you have kids, would you raise your kids in like in America or in Taiwan or in different place? Because you have those experiences, right?
I mean, we've been discussing Taiwan as an option now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it's really safe here.
Yeah.
I think education is really, really good here, especially like early education. I think is really amazing. I had a great experience.
Yeah,
with
because you have experience of that. Yeah.
Exactly. And we have family here. So he's from Brazil. All his family is in Brazil. So it's kind of like between Brazil and Taiwan. But yeah, it's pretty attractive to come here, I would say. Like safe, great education, family around.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more affordable than California, although Taipei is increasingly expensive. So yeah, it's appealing in a lot of ways.
那我觉得应该让观众听一下你的中文程度到哪里。
OK， 好的，我很害羞。
中文沟通都是完全 OK 的吗？
大部分 OK 啦，像一般对话完全没有问题。但是如果要讲比较复杂的话题，或因为我是在这里读书到4年级，所以我觉得我的水平是4年级的水平。所以如果要讲关于政治这个话题，我很多生词都不了解，所以就没办法完全表达自己，你知道吗
？OK， 那
所以是有问题啊。
台湾人看到你，他们通常会先跟你说中文还是英文？
英文。
所以这就对我觉得很奇怪，所以大部分台湾人看到你的第一眼，他会跟你说中文，跟你说英文。
对，会讲英文，然后甚至我跟他们讲中文，他们会用英文回答我。
这非常重要，一定要让观众知道。所以
讲到他们跟我讲中文嘛，因为我想要练习我的中文。我是希望这次回来台湾，这是搬回美国以后。待在台湾最长期的，对，所以我是希望能够就
尽量可以多吸收一些台湾的文化，
对，然后认识更多台湾的朋友，
对，好，
来就 discover this part of myself， 你可以帮我翻，
要不要再用中文自我介绍一下，然后再说一下你的那个频道
？OK， 大家好，我的中文名字是王婉美，台湾的湾，美国的美。我和我的老公在 YouTube 上拍旅游影片，请你们去订阅我们的频道哦。
谢谢。
好害羞。
See you guys. Okay, bye bye.